I'm here, Ishi. Arrived as soon as I could. What's the situation? Calm, for now at least. We lost Compass Station, but almost all crew managed to get out and made way to nearest Phalangites Station, which is why we know about this whole thing in the first place. It's been just a few hours, so the public still has no idea about it, but once the news about this attack spreads, we may have some problems on our heads. Right, the Zracon clearly stepped up their game since last time they tried to attack us, and our people are still angry about that Trus-Sangur debacle. We should be careful here. We will. Right now we must issue an official alert, but before that I want to contact highest members of the government and the military to work out a plan. Now, Agent Bishop, what are you doing here? I gave you an order to... Oh shit, he's compromised. Lynn, get down! Bloody hell, remind me to never piss you off. I keep forgetting how good you are with a pistol, Chancellor. So did he, but it's only thanks to your warning that... Holy shit, Ishi, you've been hit. Sit still, I'm going to call for medical team. Thanks, but don't worry. I think he missed all three of my hearts. Stars bless Adhira and her insane project. Wait, Adhira? We have no time to waste. The Science Council had a meeting scheduled on the surface today. Call them and find out if everything's alright, will you? I'm going to try and rally some reinforcements. Got it. Let me just lock the door. There. Science Council, this is the Chancellor speaking. Come in. Miss Lin, thank the stars you're alright. You have to get out of wherever you are. We have just been attacked by ethereals, and I think they might try with you too. They already did, and by the gunshots outside I'd say they're targeting the entire council as well. But we took their assassin out. We're safe for now. How does it look on your end? Bad. They pumped toxic gas through the vents during our meeting. We would have all died if not for the fact that I have my newest cybernetic lungs, and they picked up the toxin. But it was too late for some of us. Before I even realized what's happening, Nestor, Melanie and Gandar were already on the floor. We tried to escape the room, but that Rook girl from Ethereals was in the hallway with few soldiers, and they gunned Avelin, Mao and Lifras down before we could react. Kuo and Tessa managed to take them out, but Tessa was hit in the throat. We carried him into a nearby room and went looking for medpacks, but we got cut off by another wave. Miss Lin, Adhira stayed with him to stabilize the wound, but she... I know. Just take a deep breath and try to calm down. Panic won't help anyone. At least you and Commander Kuo managed to get out. And Dr. Fern Huss, but he's in bad shape from the toxin. Kuo led us to a safe room and locked us in. I tried to force him to stay with us, but he was insistent on calling for support. But with so many attackers in the building... Don't worry, Doctor. The Science Council HQ just lit up like crazy on Marshall Response Board, so it seems he made it. Takes more than a few assassins to take Commander Kuo down, so just hold tight, stay where you are, and do not turn off your communicator. I'm linking you to the Marshals right now. Help's on the way. Ishi, you heard that? I'm sorry about Tessa, but if Adhira's with him, doesn't matter now. There will be time for grieving or celebrations later. I managed to call Marshals and Phalangites and they are already on full alert, so we should be able to salvage this mess. But I need you to authorize the Scythe protocol for me. What? What is this protocol? It's a contingency plan we developed with Marshals sometime after discovery of Zracon infiltrators. Since they are all potentially compromised now, our law enforcers will round up all known people with psionic powers and contain them until the crisis is resolved. Or eliminate them if there's no way to save them. And now, with even our best psionics compromised, it seems more than probable. Eliminate? Ishi, that's millions of people we're talking about. Closer to 1 billion right now, if not more. But if they're left unchecked, they will cause chaos and death all across the country. Look, I'll take the blame. I already have a speech prepared for that. But I need your authorization for something like that. Just like you wanted it, remember? Alright, there. It's authorized. What the hell are we doing, Ishi? We're keeping the Commonwealth safe. I'll try to contact our neighbors now and warn them about this situation. Last thing we need now is a diplomatic incident. Try to get a hold of Ibrahim. If someone has the best overview of the situation right now, it's her. Got it. Ice Queen, this is Eagle 1. Come in, Ice Queen. Madam Chancellor, good to hear your voice. I thought that you and the rest of the government were done for. We're alive for now. I assume you already know about Zracon agents then. Yes, but I have this under control. We had problems on some ships, but we held on to all of them. 2 of my aides also tried to kill me, and currently they're both floating outside without suits. Manticore is ready to go, and from what I've heard from Aspinaka, he's okay as well. Some of his staff officers tried to take him out, but the droids mowed them down before they could do anything. He'll probably need a few days to reorganize his command, but he should be able to deploy immediately. Great. And the Archon? Purple's fine. They had some assassins as well, but I think they forget that Quintillions can lift an Autumn Frost Bison. Still, he lost around a quarter of the dreadnought to mutineers, but in his last report he told me that he's already leading his marines to retake lost sections. Give him a few hours and he'll be good to go as well. Even better, finally some good news. You heard that, Ishi? Military's ready to go. Ishi? Ishi! Oh hell, where the fuck is that medical team? Greetings ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to Second Chance. Unfortunately, we return in a really bad time, as Commonwealth is still reeling from one of the darkest, most devastating days since its creation, or perhaps even since Exodus from Earth nearly 300 years ago. On 7th of April 2305, all psionically gifted citizens within our nation have apparently been simultaneously possessed by the Zracon Union and, acting all across the Commonwealth, targeted our leadership. From Sinir at the edges of the galaxy to embassies in Tezhnit Kingdom in the north, millions upon millions of people became unwilling but also unwavering agents of a hostile force, and before anyone could even realize what's going on, highest ranks of the Commonwealth society found themselves under attack by their own people, some of whom never even suspected to have such powers. Within next 20 hours, politicians, researchers and business people have suffered heavy losses, but, though it sounds cruel, we are still lucky that our possessed people focused on higher ranks instead of going for other civilians, because in such situation death toll could reach billions. As it stands, during events of 7th of April, Commonwealth still lost around 1 million people, almost all of them invaluable to our administration, but the worst situation happened on Hortis and right above it. The first organization to be attacked was the Science Council, which was meeting to discuss implications of developing sentient artificial intelligence. Within the first few seconds of the attack, we lost Nestor Lachinov, head of Engineering Division, Melanie Giraud, commander of CSV Ambassador, and Toba Gandar, one of the wisest Yadran scholars, all three of them poisoned by toxic gas pumped into venting system. As the rest of the council tried to flee, the attackers shot Lifras Dolgath, the Aramathi researcher who took over at Hira's position for a while, Bomao, one of the pioneers in the field of AI, and Abava Avalin, the first Kithri to become member of the Science Council. But the worst was still to come. While few remaining researchers managed to flee meeting room and fought off the attackers under Commander Kuo's leadership, our former Chancellor, Rahosław Tessa, who was lately working together with his wife, has been grievously wounded. Professor Tanwa wanted to stabilize him, and so they were both left behind in a locked room, hoping that the attackers would not find them there. In the meantime, Commander Kuo led our two remaining researchers, Dr. Fern Haas, the 5th Grand Overseer of Minervan Cloning Vat, and Dr. Peniewski, head of Theoretical Division, to safety, and they even managed to call for help, but when our marshals retook the building 2 hours later, they found out that the attackers did found Hira and Teza. But instead of attacking them directly, they simply threw a grenade into the room they were hiding in. Still, the fact that 3 of our researchers managed to get out is an unexpected but very welcome blessing, and although the top ranks of the Science Council have been decimated, most of our regular scientists managed to survive the day, and very soon an emergency meeting was called, again by Commander Shen Kuo, who realized how important it is for the organization to get back to work, to reorganize the council, and appoint new heads of departments that lost theirs. Which was possible due to the nature of Zracon attack, which lasted exactly 20 hours to the minute. After that time passed, all psionically gifted citizens snapped out of their possession all at once, unaware of what they've been doing during past hours, and although our law enforcers were still forced to eliminate around 7 million of them and subdue another 60 million during this time, the fact that our people came back to the senses prevented complete massacre, but we'll cover that in more detail later. Because just few days after the attack, the Science Council, efficient as always, despite tragic losses it suffered, was ready to appoint its new top brass. Dr. Fern Haas became the new head of Biostock Division, since his biological expertise was well known within the organization. It was a bit more difficult for Engineering Division, but in the end it was Professor Mahesh Pillal who was finally elected to be its new director, and he is yet another of our AI researchers, even more accomplished than late Dr. Mao, so much, in fact, that he developed his own self-aware network, far more advanced than the one Mao founded, to help him out during research. So, perhaps not as industrially minded as Lachinov was, but with a network that is nearly as smart as a human and thousands of times faster, Pillal should be very efficient administrator. As for Poniewski, he initially wanted to resign, shaken after everything he witnessed during the attack, but after some long discussion with his assistants and his wife, he decided to remain, if only to ensure that such tragedy would not happen again. Plus, his new colleagues, who are nearly a century younger than his, could surely use his experience. But that still left several other positions. As you remember, we have several research ships orbiting various planets. Long ago, they served as explorers, but today they're mostly orbital laboratories, acting as central hubs that coordinate efforts of surface research facilities. And because we lost commanders of these ships as well, aside from Shen Kuo, the Science Council had to appoint new ones. The first one was Hask Terag, already well-established scholar from Falke Boss, renowned for his work as Grand Master of Yadran Archives, which are basically Yadran version of our Science Council, only slightly more monastic. For CSV Pilgrim on Curaçao, it soon found itself under command of Elgothum, one of very few mysterious Helvans who joined the Science Council. He spent last decade and a half greatly improving efficiency of our factories there, both surface and orbital ones, and made a name for himself as brilliant, industrially focused engineer, so that way, under his leadership, Curaçao, which is our main manufacturing center, should become even more prosperous than before. Not to mention that now he is the very first of his people who holds a high public position, so perhaps one day we'll actually learn more about them. Next was the Old Billy One ship, Bot 7/9, the one that mysterious, probably free drone used to flee into our territory. Granted, there's almost nothing left of the original Billy One construction, since it was taken apart to learn more about mines engineering, but the name remained as a sort of symbol. Regardless, since this vessel acted as a research center above New Sajar, it was decided that one of the Aramathi should take command of it, and her name was, confusingly, Lifres Hatsald. Turns out, Aramathi have names that can be used for both genders. Still, she was one of the more influential people within Engineering Division, and her serious, no-nonsense attitude and deep understanding of metallurgy quickly won her the position, and no wonder considering that her work was essential during researching the living metal. As for the Soaring Leaf, the old Queptilian ship, the command of it was given to Yuvanuks by the name of Kagorim. As you may remember, the Yuvanuks are rather simple people who, for centuries, acted as servants in Kingdom of Yadra, but although most of them are strong and dumb, some turn out to be extremely intelligent, channeling their usual hard-working nature into scientific pursuits instead of manual labor, and Kagorim of Theoretical Division is the best example of this trait. And finally, it was time to find someone to take over our most famous ship, CSV Tesla, because it was decided that Commander Kuo should remain close to home and take over CSV Zephyr, which orbited Hortis, and that person turned out to be somewhat special. Her name is Sandra Fisher, and despite her young age, she is our best specialist on psionics. Though not gifted herself, she possesses extraordinary intuition when it comes to researching and understanding those mysterious otherworldly powers. In fact, she's so good at it that Professor Tanwa made her the coordinator of the main facility in Asian Pyramid, and so Dr. Fisher will now take control of CSV Tesla once it returns from Yuri Frontier and take over as manager of entire Redamon Prime, and the entire Science Council hopes that, with her skills, she will be able to understand how Zracon attack worked and how to prevent such things in the future. But although the Science Council returned to work, their meeting was overshadowed by yet another tragedy. Aside from our researchers, the government has been attacked as well, and although Chancellor Lin and many other politicians survived various assassination attempts, there were still great many casualties, and our Prime Minister, Takumi Ishii, was among them. He and the Chancellor were attacked by Agent Bishop, one of our highest-ranking psionic operatives, and although Ishii's intervention saved Lin, because he pushed her out of the way, in doing so he took the bullet that was intended for her, and died minutes later. The round turned out to be poisoned as well, so although the wound wasn't too serious, the toxin overloaded Ishii's immune system almost immediately, and, according to autopsy report, his organs started shutting down mere seconds after he was hit. Despite that, he still managed to rally marshals and phalangites, sent warning message to all members of the government and the media, and even issued official black alert, which put military into action within seconds. But in the end, his body couldn't filter out the toxin and failed, leaving the nation without the man who acted as its manager and invisible hand for over a century. And so, here we are today, 4 days after the attack and just after the funeral ceremony for our best and brightest. Now, for most of our people, said funerals were quiet, private things, but for Tessa, Tanwar and Ishi, they were attended by thousands of people and transmitted all across the Commonwealth. Our Chancellor and his brilliant wife were laid to rest in a small grave next to Hortis Unification Memorial, a monument placed next to ruins of old portal to Earth. But for Ishi, it was different. He was a man who always looked beyond Hortis, beyond our solar system, always further and further, and so, as dictated in his will, he received the funeral of a stellar sailor. His body was placed into a small sealed coffin and fired into fiery embrace of Asha, with small procession of Phalangite vessels acting as an honorary last escort. The dead, however, cannot remain the main focus of our nation for long. For one, the council needs another prime minister, and after Ishi's small convoy disappeared out of sight, Chancellor Lin immediately organized an emergency session, and debates as to who should replace him began almost instantly. There were quite a lot of candidates, but it quickly became obvious that, after Ishi's century-long reign, finding out a suitable replacement would not be an easy task, and the councillors prepared for upcoming weeks filled with heated debates. Aside from that, we had to re-establish order within the country and manage our psionic citizens who, as was mentioned, are no longer under Zracon influence, but we have no idea if such mass possession won't happen again. Now, we can't really imprison all these people, because there's more than 1 billion of them in the Commonwealth, but we can use tried and tested method, implant them with tracking devices, and let them get back to their lives under very cautious watch. Normally, such decision would be controversial, but after the attack, citizens of the Commonwealth lost trust towards psionics, and some of the known ones were even lynched and killed by the mobs in the past few days. So again, it's better to be safe than sorry, though we should probably expect much more cases of frontier justice in the coming months. But even more so, there was still the threat of Zracon attack. The first target struck by our fanatical enemies was our compass station, which provided us with overview of almost all Zracon core territory. But now, with the station gone, we're blind and deaf. We suspect that this mass terrorist strike was just a prelude to actual invasion, but we have no idea where it may come from. One thing is sure though. The Aramathi world of Tintragal, which is closest to Zracon borders, was already a target of at least 2 Zracon crusades, so as soon as our navy reorganized itself after losing several officers during the attack, Task Force Manticore, Task Force Archon, and even our Wraith, now named Nautilus, received orders to move to Tintragal as quickly as possible and establish defensive perimeter. The Union has already humiliated us there once. We will not allow for such thing to happen ever again. Aside from that, the Council also issued orders for mass mechanized mobilization, and almost every planet, even ones far away from Zracon borders, immediately started producing battle droids, which can not only help us in defensive operations, but also cannot be mind-controlled. Another issue are our regular ground forces. Garrisons our battle droids are fine as well, but it would be wise to mobilize Aspinaka as well, in case enlighteners come knocking. This, however, is slightly problematic. As you remember, Aspinaka and his troops, weakened after he lost several armies on Trus Sangor, are still on Frishak where they maintain peace. If we remove them, the Yanari may try to revolt again, and so Aspinaka had to develop a quick solution, and it is this. He and his regular troops, 1 million humans, 1 million Aramathi and 1 million Yadrans, will stay on the planet and keep the population under control, while droids and spiders will move to Tintragal to bolster our front lines there, since their presence in Yanari territory is not really helpful at this point. If anything, they hurt our reputation more than they help. In the meantime, we'll redeploy several million Pacificator droids to Frishak, and as soon as they're there, Aspinaka will move out to Tintragal as well, though he will leave his infantry behind, so we will probably have to enlist some more troops in the coming months, since army of just robots and ravenous arachnids may be fearsome, but it's not exactly useful, especially on the defensive. . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . And so, the Commonwealth rushed to war, the entire state preparing for inevitable invasion. But in the meantime, after over a month of debates, back on Hortis the council finally appointed a new prime minister. As was said, it was a very difficult decision, since the person in this position would be responsible for coordinating a nation of 300 billion people, but in the end, it was decided that Codrales Sur-Husel, who up until recently was the most probable candidate for becoming next Aramathi First Speaker, would be best for the job. A stoic, logical politician with many connections, Codrales now stares at a daunting task of leading the Commonwealth in a very dangerous time. Fortunately, he has Chancellor Lynn at his side, and she already promised to help him out with everything he may need to bring the Zracon War to a satisfying conclusion. But it will not be easy. Not only the Union got a jump on us by destroying the compass station, they also effectively blinded us. So effectively, in fact, that they completely vanished from our sensors. In theory, that should not be possible and we should still be able to spot energy spikes, but Zracon mastery of psionic powers puts everything we thought possible into question. Perhaps they project some psionic field that disrupts our sensors. Maybe we can't intercept their comms because they can now communicate telepathically. We do not know, so right now we can only prepare for their arrival as best as we can. The pieces are all on the board, now all we can do is wait. It won't be idle waiting though. Knowing just how dangerous our enemies have become, the Council decided to pour more money and resources into Phalanx Protocol in order to establish a defensive line on Zracon border. And, to put it mildly, said line will be quite impressive, because right now each one of our inhabited systems that borders Union territory will receive its own merit citadel. That gives us 3 Aramathi planets, New Sajar, Tintragal and Uzema, as well as Queptilian homeworld of New Beginning, plus our capital of Hortis, just in case. And here's the best thing, when we constructed our first merit citadel near Arvo, it was an extremely expensive project, one that we never really expected we could repeat. However, our Phalangites worked hard since then, and together with our engineers they figure out how to make these stations not only more powerful, but also quite cheap, both to build and maintain. Each one of these emplacements cost less than a cruiser, while having more firepower than 3 battleships. The only downside is that they require quite a lot of energy to operate at full capacity, but still less than 50 years ago. So while initially we will build these stations on Zracon frontier, perhaps one day soon all of our inhabited systems will have one of them, serving as powerful deterrents to all who would try to attack us, assuming we manage to build them in time. So, with construction of new citadels underway, we can now take a look at the state of the rest of the galaxy, most importantly our western frontier, which we had to abandon for now. One critical piece of news is that Galactic Intent ended their war against Yenari Miravandian Alliance, although, unlike us, they settled for a simple white peace, so there's no doubt that another conflict like that will happen sooner or later. But the most important information was that all nations of the Intent suffered the same attack as we did on the very same day, which means that whatever Zracon did was, as far as we can tell, galaxy-wide. Now, fortunately, our neighbors suffered far less than we did, mostly because they never really researched psionic powers as extensively as we did, and only a handful of their people were affected, so even though there were some attacks across the Intent, they mostly weathered this incident without much issue. The same happened in the north, in territory of Jirs, Utkas and Hades, and further in the west, in the lands of Thadraka's families and their allies, which gives us a rough estimate of the power the Union now commands. It's scary, but also, let's be honest, quite impressive. Hopefully, under leadership of Miss Fisher, our researchers on Redamon Prime will be able to figure out what happened, and maybe even replicate it for ourselves. But, war or not, the time still goes on, which means we once again have elections to deal with. This time, again, wartime ones. Except in this case, the campaigns of all candidates were rather muted. There were no rousing speeches or heated debates, and the candidates mostly agreed that right now, with shock of Zracon attacks still in memory of our people, we should keep things as calm as possible. Some candidates even refused to participate outright, claiming that changing of the guard in such dire moment would weaken the nation. which in the end means that Admiral Chancellor Lin once more looks at a landslide victory. Not only is her Xeno Watch party the largest one, with greatest public support, she is also the last one of the old guard, and her presence is considered to be a stabilizing factor. So, the elections began peacefully and quietly, and would continue in such manner during following months. We have too much stuff on our heads right now to deal with political debates. And one of those things is our newest colony, which we established on Valin, that destroyed, irradiated world whose inhabitants sent out a desperate message to the stars in hopes that other civilization would arrive and prevent them from destroying themselves. Unfortunately, as we well know, that plan failed. We picked up Valin transmission and rushed immediately to establish contact, but by the time we arrived, their world was a post-nuclear hell, their entire race killed in atomic fire. Except for a small group of around 500 survivors who worked at Extrasolar Intelligence Institute, though ultimately they have not survived as well. Still, what we found there was a lead that enabled us to uncover something truly remarkable, another facility also established by the Valin, but on a completely different planet. Despite the fact that their world was falling apart around them, some of Valin researchers managed to build a base on their moon, and in it, they stored something we never thought possible. Digital scans of their brains, which, if we assume correctly, could enable us to, one day, bring them back to life. In a way at least. Which is, let's face it, knowledge that is far more advanced than our own, so it's a bit odd that they could do it years before developing interstellar travel. But still, Valin brain scans greatly boosted our understanding of neural computing, and now, with access to their planet and all the knowledge located there, at least knowledge that survived atomic cleansing, we're closer to figuring out sentient artificial intelligence than ever before. Okay, that's the last of the corpses catalogued and numbered. 2S, could you ping the recovery team and tell them they can bring them back? Of course, Doctor. Done. Fast and efficient, eh? In that case, how about we test out those processors of yours? What do you think has happened here? By here, I assume you mean Valin cadavers. Judging by fractures and bite marks on the bones, as well as the way the remains are arranged, I believe a fight broke out some time after food supplies ran out, and some of the survivors decided to resort to cannibalism. It's difficult to tell whether the fight happened on moral grounds, with those opposing the idea trying to stop the would-be cannibals, or whether it was simply chaotic brawl where all sides were equally involved. However, according to those observations I mentioned, it seems that cannibals have eventually emerged victorious, and used bodies of their fellow survivors for sustenance, which did not help them in the end anyway. Well, that's pretty much exactly what I thought. Good thinking, 2S. Very good thinking, in all honesty. Care to tell me how long did it take you to figure it out? 1.2 seconds, Doctor. Though I must clarify that it's because I already surveyed the scene and had all sensory data. Otherwise, it would have taken significantly longer. I'm afraid to ask, but how long? About 8 seconds. Very slow computing on my part, I am ashamed to say. Also, why would you be afraid of asking that? Because you just proved how obsolete my own brain is in comparison. Besides, wait, you are ashamed? Can you even, feel that? Not exactly. However, I have been programmed with extensive database of various idioms, which I can use in my speech to appear more human. My creators claim that it could help with all sorts of stressful situations, as it puts people at ease. Maybe those who won't get the implication of what your words mean. Still, perhaps that is for the best. No need to put me at ease for now, though. We still have a lot of work to do. Agreed. However, according to your suit readings, your stress levels have been growing exponentially for the past 3 days. At this point, some levity is necessary for your health. I am standing among the pile of skeletons of long-dead people who starved to death after their leaders decided that nuclear annihilation is a good idea, and on top of that I just realized that you might be taking my job in very close future, 2S. Levity is the last thing on my mind right now. Understandable. However, you should not worry about me replacing you anytime soon. As was proven yesterday when we found remains of young ones, I am still not able to process more complex ideas or information. I still have no clue as to why they were placed there. I had my doubts as well, but now that I've seen this mess here, I think I have the idea. I think those responsible for the children took them away from the main group before it dissolved into chaos. After all, feeding on the kids would be much easier for those who resorted to cannibalism. I see. So there were still some merciful ones, even as situation grew desperate. In a way, yes, but that was actually more of a mercy kill. The kids were all lined up in the middle of the room, all lying down on the floor. There was no signs of struggle, no wounds, no bite marks. There's not enough biological material left to tell for sure, but I assume someone injected them with toxin and ensured they, well, passed away as peacefully as they could. Interesting, but it's also another proof of how differently we think. I may be able to process information faster, but you can make assumptions based on incomplete data. But if we could return to the topic of your stress, do you mind if I ask you why are you so shaken by this situation? I know that sight of remains of other sentient organic creatures is stressful, but your reaction is disproportionately high. Honestly, I'm not sure, but I know that the bodies are just a small part of it. Remember that terminal we found 2 days ago? The one that detailed the fall of Valen civilization? It made no sense to me. Their descent into complete, all-out war was unlike anything I have ever seen. Why? I thought that cycles of war and peace are something natural to organic civilizations. In a way, but not like this. Here, they were already on their way to disarm themselves as their people and leaders seemed to realize that their conflicts could only end in mutual destruction. It all changed over just few years. Politicians who were known pacifists suddenly became warmongering berserkers, spitting foam and insults at rivals who were their trusted friends just months before. But what's weird is how the general population remained peaceful, and they were absolutely terrified by their leaders. It almost looks like there was some sort of outside intervention, as if their leaders were replaced by warmongering maniacs who just happened to look the same. Looks almost like Zracon infiltrators, but the Valen fell years before Zracon left their system, at least we think so. And that's what bothers me. If that's not Zracon doing, then who did it? And more importantly, why? Since we are on topic of ambitious projects and constructions, soon we received report that the first part of our sentry array has been finished. A listening post filled to the brim with best comtech that we can develop, all arranged to work together to create a single system that will, in time, monitor the entire galaxy. And although it doesn't look like much right now, it's just an 8-kilometer wide saucer, once the construction is finished, this part of the station will be able to pick up and decrypt practically any form of communication in the galaxy in a matter of seconds. If a Deus leader decides that now is the time to cleanse our worlds, we will know it. If a bunch of Yonari slavers will try to coordinate an attack on some outlying colony, we will know it. Basically, as long as people in question won't use interstellar carrier pigeons, or, well, telepathy, we will be able to know what they said. Which I think makes it understandable that security level of space around Sentry Array was increased even more, so that right now even resources needed to build it are mostly transported using automated cargo ships. We have a potentially very powerful tool here, but it's the one that could easily be misunderstood by our friends, by our enemies, and even by our own citizens, so it's critical that the very existence of this station remains a secret. Also, just like last time, the construction of this part of Sentry Array happened pretty much at the same time as Election Day, though, for obvious reasons, the station was not part of the campaign. Still, on November 20th, our citizens all casted their votes, and few minutes before official autumn midnight, newsfeeds all across the Commonwealth exploded. Because, despite her initial advantage over every other candidate, Chancellor Shulin has not been re-elected. Instead, by a very small margin, people of our nation nominated none other but Commander Shen Kuo to become Commonwealth's new leader, a result that surprised everyone, including Lin and Kuo himself. A national hero and unwilling celebrity at this point, Kuo is, as you may remember, an honorary head of egalitarian party within our government, the Individual Choice Foundation. During campaign, he often talked about increasing the autonomy of planetary governments so that people from faraway systems like Sinir would have more influence in leading the state. So, perhaps our people approved the idea. But there is also another thing. Commander Kuo, while being a very diplomatic and sociable person, also has a very clear opinion on war. He says that, in some cases, if a problem cannot be solved with diplomacy, it has to, regrettably, be solved with a big gun. It's not something that he takes pride in, but as a researcher first, he understands that sometimes direct approach is necessary, a mindset that clearly came from years of exploring the wild frontier, where he and his crew sometimes had to bring out the guns, if only to defend themselves. So maybe this warlike mindset will help us during current conflict. But still, while Kuo stepped up and took the position, in private he's not really sure if this is a good idea. Fortunately, Admiral Lin decided to remain in the government and offered her help during transition and afterwards. So then, it seems that within just a few months, Commonwealth have seen almost complete change of the guard. New Chancellor, new Prime Minister, new researchers in the Science Council. All of these people will have to guide our nation into 24th century, which has begun in an absolutely horrible manner. First the Wraith, then Yanari Rebellion, now the Zracon attack, and we're only 5 years into this new century, so let us hope that our new leaders will be up to the task. Fortunately, even though our new Chancellor and Prime Minister may be confused as hell and still unaccustomed to controlling such large nation, the gears still turn on no matter what. Since by that time, thanks to Tessa, Ishii and Lin, the worlds that we have are already pretty well developed. So that gives our new leadership a chance to learn the ropes, and one of the first political decisions they made was to transfer all samples of living metal from volcanic planet of Opshola 1 to Curaçao. As you may remember, there was a massive graveyard of starships there, once built out of this once mysterious substance. But now that we learned how to talk to it and program it to do what we want, it was decided that transporting this material between systems takes too much time, and so Rex would be brought into a special holding facility on Curaçao. And from there is just a very short distance to our main naval shipyard in the orbit, where we now should be able to utilize these intelligent, self-learning nanobots to build complicated systems of our warships. Instead of wasting days or weeks on building delicate and complex parts, we'll simply tell this metal what we want, and it will do it on its own. And who knows, maybe one day soon we will be able to make ships capable of full self-regeneration. Speaking of warships, ours are still above Tintragol because, despite the fact that it's been over a year since Zracon attack, there are still no signs of any hostile incursion into our territory. If anything, the Union is just as silent as it was a year ago, and the tension and anticipation are starting to become unbearable. The nation is still in full wartime economy, our forces are permanently mobilized, which is stressful for everyone, but nothing actually happens. But just as first voices of discontent appeared, a sudden message arrived in the council. One of our Phalangite stations reported a massive energy signature that appeared within the system out of nowhere and then vanished mere minutes later. Thing is, that station is located in Pothria system, far away from Zracon borders. Still, tired of waiting, our Phalangites rushed into action, but as was said, the signature disappeared from our scopes before we could even mobilize a single patrol vessel. By the time it arrived, whatever was there was long gone, if there even was anything, because, from what we know, if a ship appears in the system and leaves, it always leaves some residue behind it, sometimes just few molecules, but it's always there. This time, however, there's nothing of the sort, and so it was decided that it was probably just a glitch in the system. What else could it be? If the readings were correct, it would mean that something with energy output of a star jumped into the system and then vanished without a trace, which is impossible. Guess it's time to go back to staring at our eastern border then. Another few tense months went by, but then, just for a moment, in early days of September 2306, almost everyone in the Commonwealth forgot about this Zracon. Because on that day, one of the more reclusive researchers of our nation, Dr. Roman Poniewski, appeared on the extranet, where he gave an interview about truly sentient artificial intelligence, a machine with intelligence of a human, but able to process information thousands of times faster. The interview was long and quickly devolved into highly specialized technobabble, but the final message was clear to everyone. Right now, with our technology, we could attempt creating a machine that would be fully self-aware, capable of self-learning, self-determination, and even, according to Poniewski, processing such nebulous things like emotions. The question that Poniewski asked there was simply, we can do this, but should we? And immediately afterwards, newsfeeds all across the nation, even some beyond our borders, began picking the subject apart, with as many views on the matter as there were broadcasting stations. But what truly came as a surprise was Poniewski's own answer, because he claims that no, we should not create intelligent machines. Instead, we should use this technology to modernize ourselves, to replace our fragile bodies with steel and polymer, and our squishy brains with cybernetic ones. The technology for that is still way off though. We could develop artificial brains today, but they would be the size of a bus, which would make them rather unwieldy. But with the pace of our technological progress, miniaturization should catch up quickly. So, what Poniewski did there was start a debate, a Commonwealth-spanning brainstorm of ideas and opinions, which will no doubt influence his future efforts. More than that though, this interview had a very important side effect. It made people of the Commonwealth forget about the Zracon threat and, just for a while, return to the spirit of normalcy into the nation, the one where we are explorers and scientists, not soldiers and conquerors. But while it was a welcome distraction and was enough to draw public attention away from our eastern border, the military remained as focused as ever, constantly on high alert, ready to respond to any threat as quickly as possible. And just a few days after the interview, the council bent in and accepted Admiral Ibrahim's plan of quick scouting operation. The Ice Queen argued that the Zracon are clearly planning something, and the longer they remain hidden, the more dangerous they will surely become. As such, entire Commonwealth Navy would jump straight into Union's home system of Zramas, do a quick recon, and then go back with data, so we would no longer act blindly. And the council agreed, so it's time for Manticore, Archon and our Leviathan to move to Zracon capital for the first time. And here we are. On 25th of December 2306, Commonwealth's armada emerged from its wormholes and entered Zrama's system, our crews on full alert, our shields up and our weapons primed and ready to fire at the radiant host that surely waited on the other side. Instead, they were welcomed by silence and complete, utter lack of movement on any of our sensors. A minute went by, then a second, but expected ambush was not happening. The system was silent, there were no vessels moving between planets, no patrols scouting for pirates and smugglers. And then, as if hit by some kind of premonition, Admiral Ibrahim realized that the Zracon homeworld of Zrak was gone. No, that's wrong, she corrected herself. It's still there, or at least something is there, but that something was improbable at best. As our sensors struggled to make sense of this bizarre anomaly, few of our smaller ships were sent towards flanks of our formation to get the better readings of this thing, which was, from Manticore's entry point, obscured by Zrama's star. And soon, the reports came in. Zrag really was gone, but in its place was something else, a massive orb of light that, despite its outward appearance, was not a star. Confused beyond words, our Navy scientists just stared at the readings in disbelief, unable to accept what they just saw. For, if our sensors are correct, and by no means they are, because there's no point of reference for such a thing, Zrak has turned into a white hole, something that, up to this day, existed only in the realm of hypothesis. But there was also another planet inhabited by the Zracon here, one named Sara Flogir, and it remained mostly intact, until our sensors also reported that all life on this planet is gone. Then, at a hunch, one of our analysts ran the readings through Commonwealth's databases and was astounded to see that we saw readings exactly like that before, on the planet Idward, that mysterious shrouded world above Valin, that proved to be impossible to scan or research in any way. So, another surprise, but it still can't measure up to the white hole, and the white hole itself is still nothing when compared to the fact that an entire civilization that was there just months ago has vanished without a trace. Ibrahim transferred these discoveries to the council as quickly as she could, and then, after quick debate, decided to approach Zrag, if only to ensure that its new glowing appearance is not just some kind of a trick. But it didn't change the fact that, despite physically being within Zracon space, we still have no idea what the hell is going on. So the only thing we can do now is to try and find out.
Construction project concluded.
I thought I'd find you here. Still hard at work trying to catch up, I see. Same as in the past few months, Mr. Cool. Turns out managing an interstellar nation in this day and age generates more paperwork than one brain can process during regular work hours. Now I understand why Ishii was constantly popping stims in recent years. Might as well duct tape that bloody terminal to my face and it'll still take me years to sift through all his reports and notes. And don't even get me started on that invisible war we're fighting right now. I'm going to finish this report and I'm off home to get some sleep though. Stim shots may help for a month or two, but after that you can feel how connections in your brain start fusing together. Don't bother, it's going to be day cycle in half an hour, so we're up for another lovely day of keeping the Commonwealth together. If you want some sleep, it'll have to wait until evening, but I know how you feel. I've been doing the same with Lynn's reports, and I can't thank her enough for helping out. You'll think she's not a sore loser, though it's clear that she is still surprised at her loss. Still, if not for her, untangling that mess with psionic infiltrators would be a complete nightmare. You tell me. Every time I hear movement outside, I expect one of my assistants to suddenly walk in with an empty smile and another line about the light. Which is why you should carry a gun with you at all times like I do. But everything seems fine right now. Well, on that front anyway. After that insane day when they attacked us, Zracon infiltrators all regained their senses. Shame that we've lost so many good people that day, but at the very least we should be thankful that these attacks were aimed mostly at you politicians and us at the Science Council. Think on it, for 20 hours we had around 1.2 billion potential assassins and saboteurs inside the country, and if they decided to attack civilians, casualties would be catastrophic. The fact that we lost less than 1 million people back then is a miracle, and of course, letting these people to get back to their own lives was an added bonus. Yeah, but it would be better if our trained and experienced psionic operatives made it. As it stands, Task Force Ethereal can very well be disbanded, since they lost over 90% of their number. And as for the rest of them, yeah, they may be able to walk the streets now, but under constant monitoring. Speaking of, I reached some interesting reports tonight, ones regarding those bugs your government implanted into my people after you kicked out the Zracon. Saw it too, and I'm sorry that it happened. Ishii had no right to make a decision like that, and if I was aware of it at the time, I would have opposed it with all my power. Oh, but I approve. Whether he had the right to do it or not, it was the right decision to make for the country itself. Ever since Zracons proved that they could brainwash my people, we were a wild card, so it was a simple mathematics of being safe or being sorry. But what does concern me is what to do about it now. On one hand, people of the Commonwealth, especially my people, have a right to know, but on the other, it would completely undermine trust in the government and cause chaos. Not to mention, it's all behind us now, ever since Ishii scrapped the project and pulled the kill switch on these trackers. I see. Grim mathematics of choosing between moral high ground and internal stability. I have the same problem, and for a very similar reason. I spent last 2 days looking through reports of old psionic operatives who were not only compromised by Zracon fanaticism, but also actively joined their ranks. The list is not long, but it still goes into thousands, and some of these names are rather disconcerting. Hell, even our best, most talented psi operative turned traitor. And what makes it even more interesting, it seems she's been raised by Ishii himself, so you can see why it's troubling. Making the list public would be a good idea, because it could possibly help us find those people if they are back in our space, but at the same time the trust towards psionics is already at all-time low. Push it any further and there will be pogroms. I wonder if it's too late to resign. No, of course not. Actually, I think I might have an idea. You should get in touch with Propaganda Division. They could help you figure it out, maybe, I don't know, develop some public campaign and paint these traitors as victims of long-term Zracon brainwashing. That way people should still keep an eye out for them, but it shouldn't deepen their distrust. I'll think about it. And I also may have a solution for you. Lynn mentioned a small group of informants linked to GCN. Every time there was some troubling but important news, she would get in touch with them and leak the intel. The crew on the station is surprisingly good at painting even the worst things as good or neutral, without sounding too much like official propaganda. I'm sure they would figure it out. Maybe. Your comms up. Right. This is Eagle 1. What's going on? Eagle 1, this is Ice Queen. Priority report from Zramas. We found a Zracon. Understood. What's the fleet composition? Do you need reinforcements? No, sir. As I said, we found a Zracon. A single dead one to be precise, frozen and floating around in space, and you will not believe who it is. We identified them as Wise Lumgar, the one responsible for mass aromathic conversions long ago. Bastard finally got what was coming to him. Thank you for these news, Admiral. That's not all, Eagle 2. My team recovered the body, and it seems that it's mostly undamaged, aside from freezing, but marked with something our experts call Darkness Brand, the way their church marks those who betray their faith. But that's not the most important thing. Lomgar also had Datapad with him and, well, Eagle One, I think you should call the Science Council before listening to this. Before I did, and I have no idea what they meant. What they said, it simply cannot be right.